All right. So the person who I'm very pleased to interview today is Shagoofa. And Shagoofa and I worked together in my private academic excellence coaching program. And so what I thought would be really good is for us to get a better feel of what Shagoofa's challenges were and kind of why she wanted to work with me, and then kind of go through the process and all that. So Shagoofa, how's it going?
Things are going fantastic, partly thanks to you.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. But it's
Yeah.
a partnership, right? So it's just
Mm-hmm.
not just one person. It's two of us together. Like, how did you find out about me, and how did you know something like this even existed? Um, how did you know there was even somebody who could even coach you academically?
So I randomly received an invite. I believe it was actually you who invited me to um, the Art of Being Smart page to like the page. And I noticed that you had the weekly videos that came out, and I decided to join one of those videos. It was part of one of the live videos, and you had the Zoom link up on the page. And the page itself, it intrigued me because I had struggled with post-secondary education for a very long time. And so I was like, I did not know this existed. Perhaps it'll be, I'm always willing to learn and find better ways of doing things. And this seemed like an intriguing portal. And yeah, I'm really grateful. I liked the page, and I joined the weekly sessions from then on. And I wasn't religious per se, but I think I attended majority of the weekly sessions after I discovered it.
Yeah. So I haven't done it was those Facebook lives that I did, right? I would get on.
Yes.
It was like
Yeah.
every Thursday at like 8 p.m. or something. I would do it.
Every Thursday.
I
Yep.
don't know why I did it at 8 p.m. because I was like exhausted. But I don't even remember half the stuff that comes out of my mouth when I'm that tired. But I'm glad you joined. But you were pretty regular for a while. So that's great.
Mhm.
Um, so what did you kind of experience, and how, and what I guess what I'm really asking is that um, why did you kind of work with me, and then maybe not per se go to a tutor or go see somebody else? Like, what was the thing that kind of intrigued you to the program that I had? Was it
So
was it my fantastic charm and good looks and all that stuff? Was there anything else? Because we know that part's for sure, but is just wondering.
that for sure had part to do with it. I have to give that some sort of percentile in my decision, of course. But but I think when I attended the first session, I think it was after the first session, at the very end, you had said, if you're interested in a free consultation, let me know. And at the end, I had said, I'm definitely going to consider it because I think this will be something that I would be interested in. And the the reason that I kind of made that decision that perhaps this is something that I do need in my life was that you never focus per se on like work hard and study and all-nighters are good and that's the norm, which I find anybody who I've ever reached out to is just keep practicing, keep doing this, keep doing that. But it's like I'm mentally exhausted. That's not, that's not the help that I need. I need to figure, like, there has to be a better way to go through my education without feeling so overwhelmed. And so it's not, at that time I was kind of made to feel that I'm stupid. But when I heard you talk, I was like, I can relate to this because I struggle with that. And I'm like, even going through stage one, I was like, oh my God, his story is very similar to me. And that reassured me that, like, yeah, this was the best decision I made because it's somebody who has literally gone through the same thing that I have, when it comes to academics. So he's not coming from a perspective of, work hard, hustle, pull all-nighters, like sleep 5 hours a day. It's not that. It's the complete opposite, and that's what kind of clicked with me because I'm like, it's always the crazy ideas that are the best ideas,
Yeah, it's
you
really,
know?
yeah. So are you saying I'm crazy?
The best kind of crazy, Aleem.
Yeah, well, you're not the first one who said I'm crazy. So I'm okay with it. Um, I always say that the craziest people and the people that are on the verge of craziness, those are like genius. So that's how I take it. So I take it
Yes.
as a compliment. But yeah, it's pretty interesting because um, you know in our school system, you're 100% correct. What they do is they focus in on, and it's interesting because I'm just working on a training right now for our community, and that not just in the school system, but just in life, they it's almost as if human beings are like machines or robots, right? And you got to do the most work to get the best output, right? That's how we've been told, right? um, but that's why I call the company the art of being smart, because if you work intelligently and if you know how to use our greatest gift ever, which is our brain, if you know how to use that effectively, then you can actually double or triple your output with much less effort, right? And is that what you kind of experienced?
Absolutely. I absolutely experienced that with you.
Great.
And I
So
think, yeah, I think that whole, yeah, it's just, I followed exactly what society was telling me to do. You have a lack of sleep, you work really hard, you do this and that, but nothing was working. And I'm like, clearly this is not the solution.
yeah,
you know.
yeah. And then what's really sad is that you keep listening to it and you work even harder, you do more than probably most people, but you still not are not successful. And it's the reason for this is because we've never been shown how to use our mind correctly, right? And once you do that, then all of a sudden things start to shift, right? And not only did you perform better academically, but I personally saw a complete shift in your mental and your emotional state. And
I will agree. I will agree. I was actually just watching the video from our first meeting in stage 2, and I was like, that's not even me. Like I could feel the sadness and like the frustration, and I don't feel that anymore. But I feel like that emotion for that Shagoofa,
mm,
because I'm like, I was in a lot of pain and I was struggling a lot, and I'm not feeling that anymore.
mm,
It's like the greatest feeling ever. And I think that Shagoofa thanks me for making that decision.
yeah, yeah. And it was not an easy decision for you, right? Because
Mm-mm.
you had a lot of resistance from people. A lot of people were telling you, hey, this isn't going to work, and how do you know it's even going to help you? So like how come you didn't kind of like give into that? How come you kind of just said, well, no, I'm going to give it a shot? Like what was the difference in terms of what you thought and what they thought?
I think only maybe, a year or two ago, I realized that my entire life I've been living for others. And I've made a decision based on what other people wanted and what would make other people happy. And every time I didn't, I would feel like a horrible person. And clearly that was not going very well for me. But it's very hard to even accept that these decisions were never mine, right? And so I think after moving back to Edmonton, where I'm at right now, it allowed me that freedom away from those people. And you have that independence to kind of think what would actually make me happy. And only when I started to do things that made me happy did I even realize that I was not doing things that, made me happy. And so, and deep down, I've always known that my gut feeling has always been quite good. I just never listened to it when I should have. And
Yeah.
so, when this clicked with me, and while we were, while I made the decision in our first consultation of this is what I want to do, it just clicked, and I was like, this is what I need, and I know exactly what I need, and this is what I'm going to go with, because there's clearly something telling me to do it. And of course, it's not easy to face the people that you care about and the people that you love when they're like, must be a scam, or that's too much money, or how are you going to pay that? It's like, I didn't think of that. I just thought, what is going to make me feel better about myself? What is going to help me like be more successful in my life? But nobody else was thinking that maybe this is something she needs, because everybody knew that I was struggling, but no one was doing anything to help me.
Yeah, it's
you
really,
know?
yeah, no, you nailed it, because I remember when I was in school, I was going through the same thing. I'm like, I need help. The only thing around me was do more. Like, I need help. Then I was like, but I'm up till 3 o'clock in the morning every night. I'm not getting my sleep. I feel like this is not the right way to do it. But that's the only thing that people actually know, right? And so one of the things that I think, well, not that I think, but I know that made the difference, is that you began to trust yourself, right? And that is huge, because the majority of the population, and I know a lot of people are going to watch this, but 90% of the population, they just kind of follow the crowd, right? So what they'll do is
Mhm.
they don't want to ruffle feathers. They don't want to take that risk. They live in fear. They live in doubt. So they just kind of do what 90% of the people do. And then if you look at the stats, 90% of the people are unhappy. They're not achieving what they want in life, and they're not really living the life that they want, right? So you got to, it's not easy, but you got to get to that 10%, and you got to be like, okay, I got to do the thing that does it for me, right? And as you know, not an easy thing, right? But you did it,
No.
right? And
Mhm.
now that you've done it, you are experiencing what? What are you experiencing now?
This is what happiness feels like. And this is what freedom feels like. Freedom from worrying about what society is going to think, or what your parents are going to think, or what, like actually taking control of what it is that you need, and being a lot more self-aware, and understanding that, well, acknowledging that there's no one shirt fits all, and that, like, that feeling of just knowing, like, I sit by myself and I'm like, Shagoofa, what do you think? And the answer just comes to me. I know not to go ask somebody else, because the answer already came to me, and I don't want to second guess that. I've never had that feeling
Mm,
where I'm so sure of myself.
yeah. And that's huge, because that's the key, right? That's the key to success. And what's very interesting, and again, it just has to go with this project that I'm working on, is that companies, the media, even schools, they spend gazillion dollars trying to get you to see, trying to influence your definition of success, right? And so
Mhm.
society really is hoping that we don't wake up, and they're hoping that we don't actually have an idea of what success is, because if we don't have that idea, and if we're not self-aware, guess what? They can sell us stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so this is very important that you understand that, because this is now something that's not just going to help you in school, it's going to help you in all areas of your life, right? So that I thought was really huge. um, Another thing I was going to tell you is that resistance from other people, and when other people tell you you can't do it, or what are you doing, um, that's actually good. And the reason why it's good is because you know you're going on a path that other people won't take. And if you're going to go on a path that other people won't take, that probably means you're going to get phenomenally different results. Okay. So that's actually really good.
Mhm.
And people who know me really well, they are very frustrated with me sometimes, and they don't get me, and they think I'm, a jerk at times, only because I trust my gut, I trust my instincts, and it doesn't make sense to people sometimes. But in all fairness, I have a career that I love. I've done well in, in almost all areas of my life. And it's not an easy way to go, right? But the fact that you listen to yourself, what that will do is that'll give you more self-trust. And you begin to trust yourself. And when you trust yourself, you begin to actually admire yourself more. When you begin to admire yourself more, you have more self-confidence. When you have more self-confidence, you make better decisions for yourself. You live a happier life. Plus, your mental and emotional states, they improve, right? So in the beginning, I knew that you were telling me that you were going through, I think you were saying that at one point you had panic attacks, you had stress, right? You had all
Yeah,
these,
I had anxiety attacks. Yeah.
yeah. So all these
Mhm.
things are happening, and I can almost, I'm going to ask you, like, what's happening with all that right now?
Nothing.
Doesn't show up,
It's
does it?
not there. It's non-existent. I found, there's ways that I know, even if it does, it doesn't mean it doesn't creep up, because these things are not in your control. You just have to know how to control them when they do show up.
Yeah.
But there's just ways that I know now to control those. Whenever I feel like I'm getting a bit anxious, and I feel that when things are not necessarily going the way that I want them to, and that part of me is just the perfectionist in me,
Yeah.
but I know how to calm myself down when it's most necessary to be calm.
Yeah. And you were telling me that you had to write a big exam, right? And describe what that was like. Because I know most of the time when you wrote exams, right? Most of the time when you wrote exams, you're freaking out, you're nervous, you're doubting yourself, and you're like, I don't know if I can do it. So what was the experience, your most recent experience writing? And this was a professional exam, right? So this actually counts for your career,
Tough.
right?
It's so tough. Yes.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so go ahead,
Yeah.
kind of describe.
So so before, when I used to go into an exam, I would have anxiety attacks to the point where I'd blank out. And even if I'm an expert at this, I would think that I'm not. And I would just sit there and stare at the question. And I'm like, I did this, but nothing is coming through my brain.
I get
I
it.
just looked at this,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, totally. I've been there so much, and it's like
Yeah,
I'm like looking at a question, and I'm like, I don't even like I'd seen it, but it's not nothing is coming. So yeah, I get that.
nothing's coming. And this time, so it's a 4-hour exam, and you have to get there an hour before. So I was there for 5 hours at a minimum. And you have to sit there for an hour with your phone turned off. You just sit there and wait for, it started at 9, so you sit there and wait until 9 o'clock to roll around, because they don't want anybody to be searching online and things like that. So as soon as you get to your exam seat, off your phone and take it to the front desk. That's it. You have nothing else but your snacks and water. And I was sitting there, and normally that panic of, like, even that intimidation of the exam coming up, I would be like twitching and like breathing like, not normally, and I would be like overthinking that, oh my god, what's going to be on the test, and like, what if I don't know, what am I going to do? And I didn't feel any of that. I was just sitting there looking around at people, reminding myself how much I don't like being around people. I was just having, my own like conversations in my head, like, oh, look at those person's shoes. I like those shoes. And I was just so, I was just so in my element. And I wasn't even thinking about the exam. Like, deep down, I knew the exam was coming, but it was like, that's just a matter of fact thing that it's coming, you know? And when, the exams were being passed out, and the time came, I looked at the exam, and we write a 60-minute case, and then there's 75 multiple choice questions. And normally, of course, they give you ideally you would take the 3 hours for the multiple choice and 1 hour for the case. And I sat there, I looked at the case, and I was like, heck yeah, this is exactly what I knew was going to be on the case,
Yeah.
This is like I knew I did not study anything else because I had an inkling that this is exactly
Well,
what's going to be tested on it.
well, that inkling we actually we prepared, right? Like
Yes.
I showed you, right? We went through it. We're like,
Yeah.
how do you actually anticipate correctly what is going to be asked, right?
Yes.
So you follow those directions to a T, and that's how you're going to
To
do
a T. And it worked like a charm. It worked like a charm. I did not overthink while I was studying, not a single bit. And just to point that off is I wrote an exam on Thursday, so I had the whole week off from work. And like after Sunday, like Monday rolls around and I'm like, I don't feel like studying anymore. I just I don't have the urge to want to retain any more information in here. And so I didn't.
So,
I just simply didn't.
so the day before your exam, you're like, I don't feel like studying. It's like, I don't know.
Literally the 3 days before my exam, I was like, I don't feel like it. All right, I'm just gonna sit here and watch Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah,
You know, that's
yeah,
pretty much what I did because I didn't push myself. I was like, hey, there's just this one thing you need to clarify so you have it in your head.
yeah,
Clarified it, and then I left everything.
yeah. And
And I just sat.
yeah,
Hmm.
and the best part is that what you did is actually the correct way to perform better. Because remember, if you're too stressed going into that exam, that the brain isn't going to be functioning at a high level. So by you relaxing and take it easy, which is very counterintuitive, which most people won't do because they want to jam as much in as possible before the test, you actually did the
Hmm.
opposite and you actually relaxed. So your effort level went down, right? So it went down and your performance level on the exam, like you were telling me, you haven't got your grade back. I'd be interested to know, but you were telling me that as you're answering these questions, you knew that you were getting them right. So that's
Yeah.
why, right?
At, at least in the case, yeah, in the case, I was definitely like, yeah, I got this. I did it. In the time that I had given myself, I didn't listen to the 1 hour because I'm like, this is worth taking a bit of extra time from the MCQs because MCQs, you have a 25% chance of getting it right.
Yeah,
You can guess on that, but you can't guess on a written response, you
yeah,
know? So,
yeah,
and if you rush it, you're not going to write it properly,
yeah,
and especially because this is a professional exam, you have to be, I don't know, professional, you know?
yeah,
So, it's worth taking that time to plan that out and put in effort. And although MCQs, they were not easy, I will not say that they were easy because they're like the deceitful MCQs. They're deceitful because you have to read like 2 paragraphs
yeah,
before you get to the question, but they get you there because the question, you don't really need that information.
yeah, yeah,
You already know it.
yeah, 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 yeah. Interesting, interesting. Good. So what was it like? Because when we worked together, it was like once a week. And what was that whole experience like when like you actually made some friends, didn't you, along the way? I remember that.
I did.
Yeah. But what was that like for you? Like coming in once a week and having those discussions and kind of sharing how things were going? Like what did that do for you?
I think whether it was a good or bad week, it felt nice to just share it with somebody who understood, and kind of helped explain why things happened the way that they did or why they didn't happen. Or, the encouragement rather than just saying, oh, you'll work hard and it'll be better next week. Or, cheer up. Where it's like that. If it were that easy, I would have done it myself, you know? But I think it was nice to just be heard
Mm,
and to have somebody understand the emotions that I was going through and to be able to even express those emotions and like articulate them and understand why I'm feeling that because it helps right now. Where I feel an emotion and I'm like, I know why I'm feeling that emotion. This is what I need to do to help me with that, right? And I didn't have that ability before. So every week it's like you have that opportunity to kind of share your emotions and get feedback that's actually valuable and it's useful to you. And the other biggest thing for me was having other people share their experiences. And I felt like I'm not alone. We are completely different phases of our life and completely different um, uh, goals that we're trying to achieve and completely different definitions of success. And Yet we understood each other and we encouraged each other, and there was no judgment. It was just, I understand that struggle just on a different level, and I think finding that it was so like, it made me feel so much better.
And I'm glad to hear that. What did it feel like when you you went in and you were like, God, this didn't work out, and all of a sudden there's somebody there to encourage you, to lift you back up, to kind of help you understand what happened, and then kind of steer you back in the right path again. Like, what was that experience like? Because that's what the weekly sessions were all about, right? And so, what was that?
Mhm.
What did that feel like for you?
It felt just, I didn't feel like an oddball. It gave some sort of normalcy to what I was feeling. And you don't get that, from anybody else. And a lot of the times when you get advice from outside, or even your family and friends, they'll only give advice based on their experience, not based on how you're feeling. So it's like you're still not understanding what I'm feeling. But that feeling of just being, seen, and you're not like a weird person for feeling this, and you are supported, and you have that backing to help you understand why you're feeling this way. And it's completely okay to feel this way, but you also can't keep feeling this way. So here's some ways to move on from that. And it felt, I thoroughly looked forward to Saturday, because I was like, I need help. I want to stop feeling this way. But I knew that I had somebody to tell me that, and to help me through that, and to help me work through that, and find processes to kind of, figure out how to get to, where I wanted to be.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is that the majority of people, they disregard their emotions, right? And so, what are your thoughts about that? When people kind of like, no, doesn't matter how I feel, this is the thing that I need to do. What would you? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's such a big mistake, because your emotions have so much to do with everything you achieve. Um, because for me personally, my emotions were not in check or being addressed, and that led to my procrastination. But what society tells you is that no, you're just being lazy, and no, you're just, you're useless. You don't work hard enough. Why don't you work hard like the other person who has their PhD? I don't know, you know, but your emotion, like my emotions had everything to do with it. I'm not dumb. I'm a very smart person. I just was not treating myself well, and I feel like ignoring your emotions is mistreating yourself. And that is like a form of abuse to yourself.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way, but you're absolutely right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think the key here is that in most education systems, emotions aren't even considered. It's mostly like, yeah, you're not enjoying it, you're not having fun, it doesn't matter. At work, you're not having fun at your job, this isn't pleasing to you, doesn't matter. You got to get the paycheck, you got to get the grade. And to me, that's something that I think is one of the biggest mistakes you can ever make. Because what happens when you're stressed? What happens when you're anxious? What happens when you're miserable? Like, what is the natural result of that? Right? Like, you're not going to succeed.
Hmm.
Right? So unless you deal with those emotions, you can't. It's impossible to be successful. You may achieve a little bit, but you will never be able to sustain it. So that's why it's good that you mentioned that, because it's true. If you're not listening to your emotions, in a way, you're abusing yourself. So that's really good. Um, Next question I had for you was, what are some of the key learnings and some of the key takeaways that you kind of got from working with me, and yeah, just your overall thoughts and ideas, and maybe things that maybe can help other people.
I think two of the biggest things that can come to my mind right away. The first thing is, everybody has their own definition of success. And what somebody thinks is success is not yours or is not similar to somebody else, but that does not make you a failure just because, your priorities are not what somebody else's priorities are. Does not make you a failure. It just means you're successful in your own way. And if you're happy, that's all that matters, right? But a lot of the time, society will tell you that no, in order to say, one of the examples is, in order to be happy, you need to get a degree, get married, and have kids, and then you'll be happy. First of all, no. you know, how does that mean? How does taking more responsibility bring about happiness? For some people, it does. For others, it doesn't. For others, it's a choice that they make later on in life.
Yeah.
But that is not, to some people, that is the equation of success, but to others, it's not.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But yeah, the biggest thing, everybody has their own definition of success. Do not listen to anybody who tells you that, well, in order to be successful or in order for me to like you, you need to be a certain way, or you need to do a certain thing, or if you choose a certain route, then you can't be in my circle. All right.
Yeah.
I think that's very important to keep in mind.
Yeah. And if people are, let's say, have a different view, because there's certain things in my life that I may not want to be a part of, right? And it's okay, right? It's your life.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do what you think is right. And there's certain situations that I don't want to be a part of. And you should never be made to feel like you're inferior or you're wrong or anything like that, because it's what you think is valuable, right? And that's where that's also a big issue when it comes to school, because a lot of times students and sometimes adults, they'll be so desperate to fit in and to be part of the group that they will sacrifice what is important to them. Like I remember 100% when I was at university, there would be students playing cards during final exam week. And I literally looked at them. I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, don't you want to do well? And literally, because everybody else was playing cards, they couldn't say no to the crowd. Right. So what ended up happening?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how well they did, but, and I mean, the point being is that, you have to learn to say no to the things that are important to you, even if everybody else is doing it. Right. And that's a skill that you need to learn. And I think you've got that skill. Like you've learned that now.
Yeah. And one thing that people forget is that the decisions you make impact literally nobody else. It affects you. You pay the consequences for your decisions. You have no right to blame it on somebody else.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna, you might as well just blame yourself.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
at least you'll know, at least you're not regretting that, like, oh, I did it because this person said this. How stupid does that sound though? Like, are you 8?
Yeah. Especially
I think that's a big thing we forget, is that you pay the consequences for a decision regardless of whether it came from somebody else or from you.
especially if that person doesn't have the results that you want. That's where it's more
Exactly.
crazy, right? Like
Yeah.
I remember taking advice. This is the funniest thing. I remember taking advice from somebody who did not have the career that I wanted, didn't have the path that I wanted, had nothing that I could see that I wanted. And I would take advice from that person. And I'm like, why am I doing that? Doesn't make any sense. But it's because I didn't trust myself, right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
very important. Okay. Any other key learnings that you got?
The importance of understanding that relaxing does not mean that you're lazy.
That's
Your
huge.
downtime,
Huge.
huge one.
Yeah.
Huge one. It does not mean you're lazy. Your downtime is you're going to thank yourself for giving yourself that downtime. And, while we were going through the process, you were like, you need to actually write out that this is your resting time, or, highlight, like, this is what you're doing for fun, so that it's sometimes the visual aspect of it makes a huge difference, because it can click better with you to be like, I am taking care of myself, regardless of the craziness that goes on in life. I do allocate resting time, even if it's, half an hour a day or 20 minutes a day, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Makes a huge difference, but don't ever think that that means laziness, that you're just giving your mind the energy to move on to the next thing,
Yeah. And that's huge because I never even thought of that growing up. Like I would just put in hours and hours and then the best students, those are the ones that are like relaxing, they're going out on weekends. And I'm like, oh, it's because you're so smart. That's why you can do that. No, 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 no. They're doing that is what makes them smart, which is it's mind-boggling, right? Because that's
Mm-hmm.
not what we're told. So that's a huge one. Anything else that you picked up on that could be beneficial? Because there's a lot of students that are kind of going through what you went through, right? And they
Mm-hmm.
doubt themselves. They don't think it's possible. They don't think they're smart enough. So anything else you could kind of share with them?
I think throughout this process, the thing that was the most important to me and the thing that is benefiting me right now is to be self-aware.
Mm,
We forget to like check in on ourselves.
mm,
Like how are you doing? Because quite frankly, nobody comes up to me and asks me, how are you feeling today? Or how are things going? Or how are you doing? It's always every time somebody reaches out to you, there's always a second intention
mm,
to it. So I've gotten to a point where I'm like, just get to the point.
mm.
Don't ask me how I'm doing because next you're gonna be like, that's good.
I need,
That's it.
yeah, yeah,
You know?
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, how's it going? I'm doing great. That's good. By the way, can you help me with this? It's like, why didn't you just start with that? But
yeah.
like we forget that yes, you know what, we have people that love us and we have people that care about us, but they sometimes they forget to ask you how you're doing. You cannot forget that for yourself
Mm,
because you're literally with yourself 24 hours a day.
yeah.
And if you're not friendly to yourself, then you're kind of missing out. You got to be a friend to yourself too.
Yeah. In fact, I would say you need to be a friend to yourself first, right?
Yeah,
You got first, more than anything, you got to be a friend to yourself.
first.
Because
I really agree with that.
if you're not a friend to yourself, then you're very susceptible to other people's definition of success, and other people will try to influence you. And some of these people are good, but that doesn't mean that just because they're good people doesn't mean that they know what you want. It doesn't mean they're going to take you down the path that you want, right? And I can be very honest. I had a path for myself, and no one saw it for me. No one saw it for me. Everybody was just like, well, that doesn't make sense. You can't do it, da da da. And the key is you have to get to the point where you see it for yourself, and then you support yourself through it, right? So that's really good.
Yeah.
What do you think the value is in terms of having a coach and a mentor to help you?
I You can never know everything, you know. There like in my opinion, it's like, would I ever have come to this conclusion that a lot of it, if not all of it, was my mental state? I never would have come to that conclusion. But you already knew that. You come in with your expertise, and you come in with your understanding that I know how you feel, and it's never going to tie in unless you get help. But sometimes what we forget is to get that help. So having a coach who, and quite frankly, is very different. Like you're a coach, and probably you're probably the only one in this world who kind of teaches things this way. Where it's like you don't just, as far as I've met, you don't just, I think it was so unique, and I was like, nobody talks this way, nobody thinks this way, and perhaps that's what I need, is a different way of looking at things. But you have to be open to also the importance of having the coaches. You have to be open to being told that this is what's going wrong. And if you don't get that help, you have nobody to tell you that. You're not always going to criticize yourself, or provide constructive criticism to yourself, or think of ways to help yourself when you're the one who needs help, right? You need somebody to help you get started. But when you're so down in the dumps, you can't do it. It feels impossible to get out of it, right? So when you meet somebody like you who is like, I can help you get up there, but you really got to pull your weight, but it's not like holding hands. It's not, building the ladder for me to get up there. It's, here's the tools you need to get up there. I'll help you figure things out, but I can't do it for you. And I
Yeah.
think that is so important to have in a coach.
You said it so nicely. There's two parts. I was just talking to I have a person who I work with on a regular basis. Um, and we exchange ideas all the time. She's growing her business, I grow my business. And when we were having this discussion, we talked about it. We said, there's the doing and then there's the thinking. So most people combine them, the doing and the thing, they just combine them. Some people just do stuff without thinking, but the thinking is more valuable than the doing. So one of the things that we realized was that if you get the thinking really good, like if you just nail that thinking piece, the doing is easy because you just got to do it, right? And this is why for me, somebody who was on academic probation, somebody who wasn't very confident, somebody who was very shy, somebody who really didn't ever believe that I would ever be successful. All of a sudden now I've got 3 degrees, I got my own company, I've written a book, I'm teaching at university. It's not because I'm brilliant, it's not because I'm smart, it's because of the people that mentored and coached me. And it's amazing because sometimes people will say, oh, I don't want to spend this much money on something. And I look at them and I tell them that, look, the benefit that I've got is 30 years later, I'm still benefiting off of that information. 30 years later, I'm still benefiting off of it. So if you're going to make an investment, you don't make it as if it's like for the month or for the year. It's for like your life, right? So the investment that you've made is exactly that, right? And the investment I've made in coaching and mentorship, it's lifetime returns. And that's where people they don't really get that, right? Because they're thinking, oh, they just look at the money. But if you divide that by 30 years, and especially if you're younger, maybe 50 years, that's cheaper than a Netflix membership.
Yes.
That's cheaper than a Starbucks coffee.
What one thing that people don't keep in mind is, yes, there is a certain price to having these services, but you're not, and I'm sure you've heard it before, but you're not paying for just the 8 weeks or 12 weeks. You're paying for the 30 years that you have gained that knowledge consistently.
Yeah.
And so it's like, of course it's going to be this price. He's worked his ass off for 30 years to come to this point and be able to share that knowledge, so you don't have to wait 30 years to start gaining that knowledge. You can start from now and be in a much better place in 30 years rather than still be struggling down there. So one thing people forget is you're paying for all of your efforts.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the best way to look at it. And I know when I hired my coaches and my mentors, I looked at the price and I said, okay, that's how much you're charging me, but what is the benefit I'm going to get like in the long run? And then I looked at it, and honestly, 30 years later, I am way better off than I ever even imagined was possible. And I paid, like, literally, I'm not joking, less than McDonald's coffee for that.
Wow.
And I'm just like, that's a steal, right? To live a life where I can, like, literally go anywhere in the world, coach anybody, and get an income which I feel to be adequately good for me. And I'm paying I'm paying the price for a McDonald's coffee. Like, that's how you have to think, right? And that's
exactly
right. So that's really good. And that's what my coach explained to me, right? And I was thinking maybe this person's just a good salesman, but it's actually true, right? Like and on top of that, you're getting something more valuable than just time with somebody. You're actually getting a new mindset, right? They're giving you these mindsets, and these mindsets, one good idea, one good mindset can take you in a completely different direction. Like let's look at
Yeah.
some of the greatest people in the world, right? Like Einstein, he had one idea, like the theory of relativity, right? And all of a sudden,
Yeah.
oh, it changed everything. So it's the idea that you're actually paying for, right? So that's very important. Okay, now these
Hmm.
concepts that we talked about, were they difficult? Were they challenging? Were they hard to understand?
They were so simple that it's like, how did I not think about this before? But the only way you would think about these concepts is if you kind of go through the struggle and you're like, actually, life is not that complicated, you know? But the difficulty comes in working on yourself.
Yeah.
The concepts are very simple. The proven processes are very simple, but we're so used to complications that we can't bring ourselves down to the simplicity of things. And so it's difficult because it's difficult to get to the simplicity again and realize that it's really not that bad.
Yeah, and it's funny because the principles that I share, they're very simple now, but when I learned them, it took me 15 years to actually, how do I say it? 15 years to like narrow it down to the most simple ways of learning it. And when you
Mhm.
explain it, when I explain it to somebody, they're like, this is very simple. But then the question is, well, if it's so simple, then how come you're not doing it? Right? And why are you struggling?
Yep.
Is that simple? Right? So
Yeah.
although something is easy to grasp, it doesn't mean that the concepts are not, how do I say, not profound, right? So those are the things
Yes.
you have to look at, right? And
Hmm.
one of the concepts that we look at over and over again is, I keep telling you, hard work and doing more of something doesn't mean you'll be successful, right? But everybody's been told hard work will
Yeah.
equal success, but we know different, right? Because what if you're working hard, but you're working hard in the wrong area? What if you're working hard in areas which aren't going to help you get to your goal? Then is hard work beneficial? It can't be,
No.
right? And I always use the example of like a soccer player, right? If the guy wants to be a good soccer player, is it going to help him if he's shooting basketball hoops every day for 8 hours? He's not. But look how hard
No.
he's working. It's the same sort of concept,
Hmm.
right? So you have to understand that. So that's pretty interesting as well. Um, so hopefully people watching, they've got some good ideas here in terms of how it works. Um, anything else you want to share? Anything you want to say to me or to anybody else that may be listening before we end?
I think the one thing that I will always remember that kind of pushed me to get into this was when we had our consultation session, you were like, take it or leave it. Like, I'm giving you a breakdown of this is what I offer, take it or leave it. Yes, you can ponder on it, but the decision you make right now is probably the best. And at least that's how I took it, in the sense that something clicked with me, and normally I would go and ponder on it, like, oh, weigh my options. Is it good? Is it bad? Oh, but how am I gonna, pay for it, or how this and that? I didn't even go through that process because it was just
Remember,
like,
I remember.
here's what I'm offering, like, here you go. And later on, it'll be, you'll be paying a bit more, but it'll be the same service. And it's like, but that kind of put me in the spot where it's like, you have to make a decision right now, because it's very important to make a decision right now, because you know how much you overthink,
Yeah, yeah.
you know? And it never would have happened had I not just listened to what clicked with me and not questioned myself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting because you use the word, a lot of people say, I don't know how I can pay for it, right? So which is really interesting. But if you're not achieving what you want, you're paying for it, maybe not in dollars, but you're still paying for it, right? You're paying for it in having a career that you never wanted. You're paying for it and having a life that you didn't agree that you wanted to have. You're paying for it in the way that people talk to you. You're paying for it in the way you look at yourself in the mirror. Like you're paying for it. the key is
you're paying for it either way. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the question is, how are you going to pay for it? Do you want to pay for it in dollars so you have a better chance, or are you going to pay for it in misery and then maybe never have a chance, sort of thing, right? So either way, you have to pay for it. So that's interesting.
Either way, you just got to get out of that. You know, in a moment we can get into the materialistic thing, and it's like, oh no, I can't do this. But then you don't even get to the question of like, how can you work with me to make things work for me? Right? It's not like you said you have to pay it right now or I'm leaving. You know, but when you make that decision, you're like, it otherwise won't come to your head if you're only in that one line of like, no, it's too much money. Then you don't even think of the question of like, would you be able to make it work for me so I can accept this because I want to do it. I just need, you know, some understanding from you as well. And that's how it came about, is like, this is what I can do. All right, great. And then we went on with it, you know?
Yeah. And we came up with a plan that worked for you, right? Like we said, okay, how do we make this work? And then we came up with a plan that you were happy with, and then we just went ahead with it. So yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you know, I also want to end this by saying that, you know, you were like one of my star students, because you were like, you came in and I could tell you were scared, you were nervous, but you were miserable, you were unhappy, and you were like, the world has just beaten me up, right? And then you still had the guts to go for what you wanted, which was exactly what I look for, somebody who just has the desire and the commitment just to want better for themselves. And then you kind of like jumped off the plank, and then you trusted me, right? And then you trusted me, and I could see every week you're just getting better, you're getting better, you're getting better. And now, like, you did all the homework, you came to all the sessions, you asked all the questions, and you know, we spent a lot of time on that stuff. And now I look at you and you're like, you're even telling me like, hey, Aleem, don't forget to do this. Aleem, don't forget to do that. Remember with the lies? Right? So you were even telling me what to do. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then like, you're laughing more, you're joking more, you're, you know, you're having more fun. And it's like the perfect situation. So I really wanted to say a couple of things to you. And that is that, you know, don't ever not trust yourself, because although other people may not agree with you, you're going on your own path. So you got to trust that. And number two is that, you know, it was just a pleasure working with you, because there was no stress on my end. It was just, you just did what was asked, and then you just didn't fight against it. And next thing you know, you're doing so well, right? So this is very important. This is why I pick and choose the students that I work with. And the reason I made that offer to you was because I knew that I could help you, because I already could tell from your personality and your I think your inner qualities, right? So it's good. And we talked about it yesterday on the phone, that we had a win-win situation, right? So it was really good. And I'm very glad that I have been able to help you improve your life and all that. And I think that, but this is the reason I got into it, right? It was just to be able to do this for other people. So, because I never had this growing up. I just had people telling me off and say, stop being so stupid, stop being so lazy. I'm trying. And they're like, shut up, do more work. You know, that was me growing up, right? So.
And you know what? It really shows that you care. You genuinely care about what you're doing, and you're in it to help people, because you can just tell based on, like, you've never once made me feel like, oh, why are you feeling this way? Or, you know, it's not like pointing fingers. It's like, okay, you're feeling this way, let's talk about it, you know? And it's completely it's almost like an academic therapist, I'm not gonna lie. You know, you didn't even need the education for it, you just became it. You're like meant for it, you know? But I agree. Like, I could tell that you love what you do, and even in the way that you communicated, it was like, you know what you're talking about. Like, you know, like you mentioned, you have the proven process. You just need people to accept that and, like, you know, acknowledge it and trust it. and you're like, you can trust it or not. I'm going to share it with you because I genuinely care about this and I genuinely want to help people. So I really like that about you, is that, you were there to like share your knowledge, and it truly made a difference in my life. And like I said before, I was watching the very first video, and I'm sure I'll go and finish, the rest of it, but I'm not the same person in the best way possible.
Yeah.
So I can't thank you enough.
Yeah, and goes both ways, because you trusted me with your future, right? So it goes both ways. It was good. It was ideal. It was an ideal relationship and an ideal partnership that we had. So that's awesome.
Yeah. And I'm already seeing the fruits of your labor, so I can't complain.